You feed a stray dog outside a train station one night, then forget about it. 2 years later, on a different street, that same dog cuts through a crowd straight toward you, tail low, body wagging, before you've even placed its face. Coincidence or memory? For most of history, that question got treated as sentimental. Over the last 20 years, researchers studying birds, elephants, dogs, and dolphins have turned it into hard science, and what they found suggests kindness leaves a far deeper mark than most of us assume. Here's the part most people never think about. Most animal responses to humans aren't memories at all. They're reflexes. A fish that's caught and released doesn't remember the person who caught it. A deer that startles at a hiker forgets that hiker within minutes. The overwhelming majority of animal-human encounters on this planet are momentary. Fear, then forgetting, on repeat. What do you think your pet remembers from you? Tell us your ideas on the comment section. What's genuinely rare is an animal that can build something closer to a relationship, a specific, lasting mental model of one individual human, stored and retrieved months or years later. Scientists have a name for this. It's called individual recognition, formally defined by biologists Elizabeth Tibbets and James Dale in 2007, and it's far less common across the animal kingdom than people assume. It takes particular brain architecture, built for holding identity, plus a chemical signal to actually file that identity away as worth remembering. Only a small number of species have both pieces working together, which is part of why most animals treat human as one interchangeable category rather than a gallery of distinct individuals. That chemical is oxytocin. In 2000, researchers at Emory University studied mice bred without the oxytocin gene. These mice could learn mazes, smell normally, and remember objects fine, but couldn't remember another mouse they'd already met, a condition researchers called social amnesia. Without oxytocin, the brain simply failed to file away the identity of individuals it had just encountered. Oxytocin is the molecule that turns a forgettable encounter into a stored memory of who someone specifically is. That single finding reshaped how scientists think about animal-human bonds. If an interaction triggers oxytocin, it has a real, measurable chance of being remembered as one individual, not a blur of every human ever seen. When researchers went looking for which species do this with us, 4 groups stood out. Start with crows. The research is a little unsettling. In 2006, wildlife biologist John Marsluff and his team at the University of Washington trapped 7 wild crows on the Seattle campus. While trapping them, researchers wore a rubber caveman mask. Afterward, they released the birds unharmed and began walking campus in 2 masks, the same dangerous caveman face, and a second neutral mask that had never been linked to any harm. The response was immediate. Crows mobbed and screamed at anyone wearing the dangerous mask. Anyone in the neutral mask was ignored. What was genuinely surprising came next. Crows that had never been trapped, some not even hatched in 2006, began scolding the dangerous mask too, having learned the threat from parents and flockmates who had. Researchers have documented that reaction persisting for as long as 17 years, passed down like an oral history that isn't oral at all. The study controlled for simpler explanations. Observers didn't know which mask was which, and researchers varied their clothing and routes so the birds could only be reacting to the face itself. Brain scans even showed a distinct neural response to the dangerous face, resembling fear circuitry seen in mammals. The flip side of that story matters more here. Marsluff and other researchers have also documented crows that form long relationships with the specific people who feed them, sometimes leaving small objects behind: a button, a shard of colored glass, a paperclip. One man outside Seattle who'd fed the same family of crows for over 4 years found a pine twig with a soda can tab threaded through it, said exactly where he left food each morning. Marsluff calls this reciprocal altruism. Scientists caution against reading it as literal gratitude, since crows also cache and swap objects for reasons having nothing to do with people. But the underlying mechanism isn't in dispute. The crow has built a specific, lasting representation of one particular person, separate from everyone else on the street, and treats that individual differently because of a history of kindness. Elephants have the largest temporal lobes relative to brain size of any land animal, the region most associated with long-term memory. In 2014, biologists Karen McComb and Graham Shannon played recorded human voices to 47 elephant families in Kenya's Amboseli National Park. Some recordings were Maasai men, a group that has occasionally clashed fatally with elephants over grazing land. Others were Kamba men, farmers who rarely conflict with elephants at all. The elephants reacted completely differently, bunching defensively and raising their trunks to scent the air at Maasai men's voices, barely reacting to Kamba men. Then the researchers played Maasai women and Maasai boys, neither typically a threat. The elephants relaxed. They could tell, from voice alone, not just ethnicity but age and gender within it, sorting every person nearby into exactly how much caution each one deserved. That's not a blunt instinct. That's a detailed, continuously updated internal database. It tracks with older research on the same population. A separate study led by McComb found that adult female elephants can recognize the individual contact calls of roughly 100 other elephants spread across more than a dozen family groups, a social ledger that keeps growing for as long as a matriarch lives. If an elephant's brain is precise enough to sort humans by danger, there's no biological reason it wouldn't be equally precise sorting them by safety and familiarity. Keepers at elephant sanctuaries report the same pattern. Animals greeting long-term caretakers differently than strangers, even after years apart. The same hardware that remembers who to fear appears to be the hardware that remembers who to trust. Dogs may be the clearest case of all, because with dogs, scientists caught the mechanism in the act. In 2015, a team led by Miho Nagasawa at Azabu University in Japan reunited dogs with their owners after a short separation, then ran the same test on hand-raised wolves and their caretakers, measuring oxytocin before and after. In dogs, sustained eye contact with the owner triggered a measurable oxytocin spike. In both the dog and the owner, each one's rising level seeming to drive the others higher still. In wolves, raised by hand and just as socialized to their caretakers, that loop simply didn't appear. That difference is the story of domestication, compressed into one hormone. Sometime over the last several thousand years, dogs evolved a nervous system capable of forming that specific loop with humans, the same oxytocin circuit that, across mammals, binds parents to infants. Dogs didn't just learn to tolerate us. Their biology rewired itself to file familiar humans into the category the brain reserves for family. Cats show a much weaker version of this loop, oxytocin rising only slightly after play with an owner, which suggests the dog bond isn't simply a byproduct of living near humans, but something specific to how dogs evolved alongside us. What the 2015 study showed was that molecule doing its work in real time, a dog recognizing a kind, familiar person, isn't sentiment. It's neurochemistry, running on a loop a wolf's brain doesn't have. If dogs show the mechanism, dolphins show its limit. In 2013, biologist Jason Bruck, finishing his doctorate at the University of Chicago, spent 5 years playing recorded sounds to bottlenose dolphins across multiple aquariums. Every dolphin invents a unique whistle within its first year of life, a signature sound that functions almost like a name. Bruck played dolphins the whistles of animals they'd once lived alongside. Some separated for over 20 years. Dolphin after dolphin swam straight toward the speaker at an old companion's whistle, showing no such interest in strangers' whistles. In one case, a dolphin recognized the whistle of a former tank mate she hadn't heard in over 2 decades, the longest social memory ever documented outside our own species. That study measured dolphin memory of other dolphins, not humans specifically. Nobody has run the identical experiment with a human voice, but it proves the underlying capacity exists. A brain that can file an individual away, hold it untouched for 20 years, and retrieve it instantly on the right cue. Researchers tracking the same wild dolphin communities year after year, off coastlines from Florida to Western Australia, routinely report individual animals approaching specific boats and specific divers they've known for years, while ignoring others nearby. And then there's the story that, more than any lab result, is the reason this question gets asked at all. In 1969, two young Australians living in London, John Rendell and Anthony Burke, bought a lion cub from the exotic animal department of Harrods. They named him Christian, kept him in a flat above a furniture shop, and raised him for about a year, walking, feeding, and sleeping near him daily. As Christian outgrew city life, the two men contacted conservationist George Adamson, who agreed to rehabilitate the cub into the wild at his camp in Kenya. In 1970, they flew Christian to Africa and said goodbye, unsure they'd ever see him again, let alone be recognized. They returned about a year later. Adamson warned them not to expect much. Christian was fully wild by then, leading a pride of his own. The men walked toward the area where he'd last been seen. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Christian appeared, hesitated, and broke into a run, rising onto his hind legs to wrap his front legs around both men at once, nuzzling their faces the way he had as a cub. Footage of the reunion sat largely unseen for over 3 decades until it resurfaced online in 2008 and was watched by tens of millions of people almost overnight. Researchers are careful not to overstate that footage. A year isn't 20. Christian had spent months being raised entirely by these two specific people, a far stronger foundation for recognition than a single kind gesture. But even with that caveat, what the footage shows isn't textbook wild animal behavior. It's an animal with every biological reason to have moved on, choosing, unmistakably, not to. This part is easy to skip, but shouldn't be. Nearly every scientist behind this research offers some version of the same warning. Be careful not to read too much into it. When 4 divers freed a 50-foot humpback whale from a tangle of crab trap lines off the California coast in 2005, working for over an hour with curved knives while a single flick of her tail could have killed any of them, the whale swam in circles once free, then approached each diver individually, nuzzling one before moving to the next. One of the divers described it as feeling exactly like being thanked. Marine biologists studying whales point out we genuinely can't know what was happening inside that animal's mind, whether it was relief, curiosity, or something we don't have a word for. That caution matters. Recognizing a person isn't the same as feeling grateful to them, not in any sense provable in a lab. Primatologist Frans de Waal argued that science has historically failed in 2 opposite directions here. One is anthropomorphism, projecting human feelings onto animals without evidence. The other, a term he coined himself, is anthropodenial, refusing to consider that animals might share our characteristics even when evidence points that way. The research on crows, elephants, dogs, and dolphins sits deliberately between those 2 failure modes. It doesn't claim these animals feel exactly what a grateful human feels. It just rejects the older assumption that they're incapable of holding on to us as individuals at all. What the science actually demonstrates, cleanly and repeatably, is narrower and in some ways more remarkable than the sentimental version. Specific animals, across unrelated branches of the evolutionary tree, can build a lasting, individual, positively weighted memory of one particular human, separate from everyone else, triggered by real, measurable neurochemistry. Whether that memory comes bundled with anything resembling gratitude is a question science hasn't settled. But the recognition itself, the part where the animal knows it's you, specifically, out of everyone else on Earth, that part is no longer up for debate. Here's the part nobody expects going in. This isn't animal trivia. It's a mirror. We live in a moment where interactions, with animals and with each other, have gotten shorter, more transactional, more disposable than at almost any point in human history. We scroll past. We assume most of what we do leaves no trace. A quick errand for a coworker, a stranger given directions, a dog fed once outside a train station, these register, in the moment, as small and forgettable. But the crow remembers the specific hand that fed it for years after the moment has passed. The elephant is quietly sorting every person nearby into a precise category of trust. The dog's brain is running a hormonal feedback loop with yours right now if you have one. The dolphin can hold an individual in memory for 20 years without a single reminder. None of these animals can tell you they remember. They can't post it or say thank you in a language you'd recognize. And maybe that's exactly why the science matters more, not less. It means the memory isn't performed for an audience. It's just what happens, quietly, inside a nervous system, when something kind actually lands. If that's true for a crow, an elephant, a dog, and a dolphin, it's almost certainly still true, in some form, for every person you've ever been kind to as well, even the ones who never got the chance to show it. So, do animals remember the humans who were kind to them? The honest answer, gathered from 2 decades of research across 4 continents and 4 completely different branches of the animal kingdom, is yes. More precisely, more durably, and for far longer than most people would have guessed. A crow can hold a face in memory for 17 years. An elephant can sort an entire population of strangers by exactly how much danger, or how little, each one represents. A dog's brain lights up on a private hormonal loop the moment it looks you in the eye. A dolphin can wait 20 years and still know exactly who's calling. And in Kenya, in 1971, a lion with every reason to have forgotten 2 men entirely chose, instead, to run toward them. Kindness, it turns out, is rarely wasted. Even when nothing is said back. Even when you never find out. Somewhere, something remembers. If this video left you wanting more, hit the like button and subscribe, because the next discovery is just around the corner.